In a medieval village tucked into the dark forests of Ireland, an otherworldly scream pierces the quiet of the night, and terrifying chills corkscrew up the spine. Outside a house, an elusive creature lurks, but it isn't one of the more familiar critters of Irish lore. After all, there are not really any sightings of leprechauns or fairies. In fact, it's not the appearance of this creature that is most frightening. The scariest presence stalking the Emerald Isle is best known for its sound. For centuries, the high-pitched shriek of the Banshee has cut through the night and shattered the nerves of the Celtic believers they haunt. They are the most terrifying creatures in Irish lore.
Legend has it that in 1780, in the midst of the United States Revolutionary War, a man named Dave Warner set up and ran a flour mill near the Tar River in North Carolina. He did this so he could supply the soldiers with food, even though by doing so, he knew this was an act of treason against the British Crown, and it would be certain death if he were found out. Word spread fast in underground circles of his contribution to the militia, and before long, people came by to express their gratitude. One day, an Irishman from a neighboring town stopped by to thank him, and while he was there, he gave Dave a warning. He told him that occasionally, in the past, when the moon was full, gut-wrenching, horrible screams of a woman would echo off of the banks of the river. The story had it that during these times, the river would flow black, and a terrifying spirit of death known as the Banshee would emerge, and it would hunt for victims. Dave thanked the man for the warning, but for whatever reason, he was sure that his peaceful soul would keep him safe from any evil spirits like the Banshee. Turns out, Dave was right. The following year, the cries of the Banshee did echo off the river, but Dave was never harmed. Then in August of 1781, the Irishman returned and had another warning for Dave. This time he told him that Dave's contribution to the war had gone around to the British, and a handful of them were on their way to do away with Dave. Again, Dave was unmoved by the man's warning, claiming that he would enjoy a good fight with a few redcoats. A few days later, a few redcoats did indeed arrive, and Dave was no match for them. They violently beat him, and then they dragged him to the river to drown him. Just before they did, however, Dave warned them of the Banshee. Apparently, over the previous year, he had made some type of connection with his spirit, and he told the soldiers that if they killed him, they would be cursed, and the next time that the river ran black, the Banshee would come for them. The soldiers hesitated for a second and looked around the woods. This was a ruse, right? Just Dave trying to weasel his way out of certain death, right? The Banshee weren't real. The redcoats looked back at Dave and then made their choice. They tied him firmly to a large rock, and then after beating him a few more times, they dumped him, very much alive, into the Tar River. And check this out. Just moments later, a spine-chilling scream echoed upstream as a mysterious fog suddenly rolled in from nowhere. The redcoats, of course, ran back to the mill and barricaded themselves inside. Shortly after that, night fell and a full moon rose. And through the window, the men could see the river, and at least from this angle, it most certainly looked black. Then they all heard the most god-awful scream that anyone has ever heard, and one man was chosen to go have a look. In the distance, he saw a hooded woman who appeared to be floating. As she moved closer, she passed in and around and behind shrubbery, and after a minute, he lost sight of her. The man ran back to the group to share what he had found, but he found them standing as if they were in some sort of a trance. The man turned around, and there she was, the Banshee. And at that very moment, the man's eyes glazed over, and he too fell into a trance. And then, wait for it, they all walked mindlessly and through the fog down to the river, and one by one, they entered the rushing black water and drowned. According to legend, the Banshees still haunt the Tar River today. And during a full moon, if you hear screams, you should run, because the Banshee is coming for you.
This is a very special video that we produced in collaboration with our good friends at True Stories Only. Damon and Amy at True Stories Only uniquely explore a wide variety of fascinating subjects within the realm of the unexplainable. I'd highly suggest checking out their channel. We'll put a link in the description below. Gaelic legend says a banshee is a kind of fairy that appears as a harbinger of death. The name Banshee comes from the Old Irish term Banshee, meaning woman of the fairy mound. Small earthen mounds are found all over the Irish countryside, generally marking ancient grave sites. The Banshee is said to appear and howl like a wounded beast, as an omen of an impending family death. Banshees generally appear in one of three common forms: a youthful woman, a dignified matron, or a withered old crone. They reflect the three qualities of the Celtic goddess of war and death. But over the centuries, Banshees have taken on a great variety of looks. She's often reported as a beautiful female wearing a shroud. Sometimes she's seen with flowing red hair, donned in a white dress, with a ghastly, pale complexion. Others have reported her with silver hair and a silver dress. Still, other times she's in a gray robe. And while some accounts claim she's tall, others report she's a very short, elderly-looking figure, only a couple of feet high, in keeping with the woodland fairy tradition. One popular guise has her appearing as a washerwoman, scrubbing the bloody clothes of the person who is about to die. She's also been described as an old woman with long white locks, a green dress, and terrifying red eyes, borrowing imagery from ancient mythology. Those who looked into Medusa's eyes turned to stone. Those who saw the Banshee and heard her horrifying call were destined to die. Still, others have seen her as a more passive old lady, dressed in black, with a veiled face. Sometimes she has sharp, rotting teeth and long, claw-like fingernails. The most grotesque apparitions were descriptive of a headless woman, naked to the waist, and holding a bowl of blood. Of course, the Banshee is best known for her hair-raising scream, hence the term screaming like a banshee. But even here, there are varied accounts. The most familiar form of a banshee is the angry and hateful spirit that howls at her victims with spine-chilling ferocity. In some cases, her shrieks are said to be celebrations of the imminent death of someone she despises. Banshees are native to Ireland, and early accounts of them have been found in writings dating back to 1380, along with other medieval records. But banshees aren't always spirit beings. Some flesh and blood women were known as banshees, and they worked for elite Irish families, serving them as a prophet or an oracle. In 1437, Scotland's King James I was confronted by a living banshee, who forecasted the king's own murder at the hands of a fellow royal. The banshee's scream is known as keening, a practice dating back to the 8th century in Ireland and parts of Scotland. Keening women would sing or cry for someone who was dying or dead. Some were even traveling professionals and were in high demand. But these keeners sometimes took alcohol as payment for their services, and this branded them as sinners who were destined to become banshees. Banshee keening was an unearthly warning from the grave, and their screeches had terrifying power. In some parts of Eastern Ireland, the keening was said to be so shrill it could break glass. In other cases, they'd spread their warnings by knocking on the door of the home, where the death was predicted. Banshees remain very elusive. According to legend, if a banshee knows she's been spotted, she'll disappear in a puff of smoke, giving off a sound like the beating of wings. Known by many names, including the Hag of the Mist, Little Washerwoman, or the Hag of the Black Head, there are many backstories about where she came from. One tale says she's the ghost of a young girl who was violently murdered. Another says she's a woman who died in childbirth. It's often claimed that banshees only cry their laments to the descendants of genuine Irish stock. Some say they originally appeared to only 5 prominent Celtic families, then spread as they married outside the clan. Banshees generally don't kill their victims. They just terrify them and warn them that someone close is about to meet their doom. If somebody ventures into a risky situation where the chances of survival are slim, she'll appear as a howling figure who cries out a mortal warning. Other stories recount soldiers in the field fleeing an impending battle after a banshee cry warned them of the deaths that were to come. Tragically, the escaping troops would be killed by their enemies as they fled, or they'd be executed by their own commanders for deserting the battlefield. While banshees traditionally don't take human lives, there are stories of some that delight in tormenting their victims with shrieks so incessant they drive them to madness or suicide. Some accounts say they can even tear people to pieces, like harpies, again borrowing from ancient mythology. It's this version of the banshee we know today from horror movies and urban legends, though occasionally they've also been known to manifest as creatures associated with witchcraft, like a weasel or a crow. Banshees were not always seen as horrifying figures wailing with fury. Certain families regarded them almost like guardian angels that shadowed each family member while they were alive and watched over them after death. They were often hypnotically attractive women who sang sad, haunting songs about the family they oversaw. They'd begin their singing days before a death, which was usually heard only by the person intended. Irish lore tells the story of a banshee named Abel, who was in command of 25 more banshees that served with her. This myth may have been the germ of the belief that, if many banshees appear at once, it foretells the death of an important figure, as if the passing of a prominent person deserves special attention. These more benevolent banshees are said to have the sweet voice of a virgin girl, even as she appeared as an older woman crouched beneath a tree in a shroud and veil. Many accounts cast their songs as more sad than shrill, mournful rather than menacing. These banshees are seen as messengers who give a family time to prepare for a death. Some traditions even have them escorting the deceased to the other side. In these kinder versions, her eyes are red from crying over the death. There's no agreement on how banshees know about an imminent death, but legend warns against tempting them into making an appearance. Folklore says that if you discover a lost comb on the ground, you shouldn't touch it. It's thought to be a trap, the property of a banshee who will curse you with bad luck if you pick it up. It might be good advice. After all, centuries of experience have made one thing clear. One would never want to hear the horrifying wail of the banshee. Again, I wanted to especially thank our friends at True Stories Only for their collaboration and contribution to this video. Damon and Amy over at True Stories Only are a great example of how true curiosity results in fascinating, compelling content. I would highly recommend that everyone check out their channel here on YouTube and consider subscribing and supporting their efforts. In addition, I'd like to thank Darren, a longtime subscriber of ours, for his fantastic suggestion to cover this fascinating cryptid. Darren, we appreciate all of your support and always welcome new ideas for future videos. My name is Scott, and thank you so much for watching. We are Mystery Syndicate. If you like what we do, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, leave a comment, and give this video a like. And to be notified when we post new videos, hit that notification bell. Also, Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Patreon. And for exclusive merchandise, visit our website at www.mysterysyndicate.com. From all of us at Mystery Syndicate, thank you again. We sincerely appreciate your support.